The beginning of the game, the crazy part. That morning, I was reviewing reports that were supposed to ensure that nothing, absolutely nothing, could break my project. Projects that, without me realizing, would define everything that was about to happen. At Sterling Enterprises, I managed systems that kept hundreds of millions of dollars in transactions secure every single day. Every line of code I wrote, every algorithm I adjusted, prevented failures that could have cost millions. Netflix, Amazon Prime, any streaming platform during peak holidays. My work was there, running silently while no one noticed. Growing up in a small town, my parents worked tirelessly. My dad in a parts factory, my mom cleaning houses. I learned early that discipline mattered more than a diploma from a fancy school. I didn't have academic luxury, but I spent late nights teaching myself every language, every algorithm, every protocol that could make me indispensable. And for years, my work kept Sterling running like a clock. Fail saves, automated backups, complex optimizations, all built by me. But Preston Hargrove, my direct boss, had no idea. He lived in a world of glass offices, expensive coffees, and hollow presentations. Yale MBA, influential family, luxury cars, $1 million house, all a facade. And what really got me? Preston called that technical leadership, sending TechCrunch links with thoughts in the subject line. He spent $300,000 on consultants to explain concepts I could teach a high school intern in 15 minutes. While I was fixing servers that would crash on Christmas, he hosted networking lunches with VCS who had never coded a line of software. The first warning signs were subtle. Jenny from HR avoided eye contact in meetings. My direct team seemed tense when I asked about weekend plans, but I was too focused on optimizing systems to notice office politics. Until that fateful day, Friday afternoon, I got the email. Thank you for your services. Your position has been terminated immediately. No warning. 12 years building everything they had. And dismissed in a cold line of text to drive home was a blur. I tried to rationalize cost-cutting, downsizing, something bigger. But while traffic swallowed me and the radio played loud, I realized something. Preston Hargrove couldn't run his company without me. Nothing in his slides, nothing he sold to investors existed without my silent work at home. I found my wife, Rachel, sitting on the couch. She immediately recognized the storm behind my eyes. "How are you?" she asked calmly. "Bad," I replied. "No severance, nothing. Just let go." She knew my sacrifices, my missed events with the kids, all the nights lost to servers crashing in the middle of the night. She didn't need words to understand my quiet anger. That weekend, I went through old files and found something that changed everything. An email from an old mentor, back when I was still learning advanced programming. He warned about a technology I had created years earlier, a load balancing algorithm that prevented catastrophic system failures. Sterling was using it daily, but I had never formalized a license. Until now, the reality hit me hard, everything sustaining the company. Every infrastructure depended on something registered in my name. Every transaction, every system, every $1 million client contract was built on something I owned. And in that moment, I realized Preston Hargrove thought he had won. He was wrong. Monday morning came like a storm I hadn't expected. The house was quiet, the kids gone to school, and the coffee in my cup was already cold, but my mind was racing. I had discovered the truth over the weekend. The algorithm, the systems, everything Sterling Enterprises relied on was legally mine. I opened my laptop and drafted an email I would never send. At least not yet. Preston Hargrove had made the fatal mistake of underestimating me. 12 years of loyalty, late nights, missed family moments, all building his empire. And he had no idea who was really in control. I spent the day mapping every interaction I had ever had with the system. Every deployment, every security protocol, every line of code that could prove ownership. My old mentor's notes were my blueprint. I began documenting timelines, version histories, and even emails between executives that referenced my work without crediting me. Every piece was a puzzle, and I was suddenly the only one who held the full picture. Then came the calls. Legal, inquiries, HR, friendly check-ins, vague emails from former colleagues pretending to be casual. Preston's panic was beginning to ripple outward. His carefully constructed empire relied entirely on my patent, and every move he made now was tentative reactionary. But I didn't act immediately. I had learned early that patience was a weapon. Rushing would expose me, make me predictable, ruin the leverage I now held. Instead, I spent the afternoon at my local library, reviewing past contracts, employment agreements, even corporate bylaws. Everything pointed to the same truth. Sterling Enterprises had no claim over what I had created. By evening, I made a small, deliberate move. I reached out to Sarah Torres, the patent attorney my mentor had recommended years ago. Calm, precise, professional. We need to review my patent, and we need to strategize. Her response was instant. She understood the implications immediately. If what you say is true, this could end Hargrove's control overnight, she said. And just like that, the game had begun. I spent the night mapping potential outcomes. Preston would call, surely. Perhaps he would try to negotiate. Or maybe he'd panic and make a fatal error. Every option was on the table. Meanwhile, I started mentally rehearsing every conversation, every argument, every contingency. 12 years of experience had taught me one thing. People panic when they realize they've lost control. Before I went to bed, I glanced at the kids' bedrooms. Tommy was asleep with his baseball cap by his bedside. Katie's homework scattered across her desk. For the first time in months, I felt a sense of clarity, almost serenity. The storm was coming, but this time I was ready. Tuesday arrived like a challenge I had been waiting for. My phone vibrated incessantly, each buzz a reminder that the chessboard was set, and Preston Hargrove was about to make his first move. I stared at the screen, multiple missed calls from unknown numbers, a few familiar ones I didn't answer. My hand trembled slightly, not from fear, but anticipation. Then, at precisely 3:17 p.m., the call came. A number with a 415 area code. Classic San Francisco corporate line. I hesitated, my finger hovering over the green button. I remembered every sleepless night debugging the system, every Christmas Eve I had missed with my family. Today, the balance of power had shifted. I pressed answer. Derek. Preston's voice came through. Tight, strained. Gone was the usual smooth arrogance. Gone was the swagger of the man who dismissed me with a 4-line email. We need to talk now. I let a moment of silence stretch. Long enough for him to feel it. Long enough for me to savor the shift in control. My mind wandered briefly to Tommy practicing his baseball swing in the backyard, Katie humming while working through algebra. For years, my life had been a balancing act between family and a company that had never appreciated me. Today, that balance was shifting. I'm listening, I said finally. Calm and measured. Preston didn't waste time. Your patent, US 11,247,856. Sterling Enterprises. It's causing problems. I need to know what your demands are. Licensing? Compensation? I chuckled quietly, a sound he couldn't see but could feel through the phone. You thought firing me would end the problem? You were wrong. I built your empire, Preston. Without me, nothing works, and now the rules have changed. The silence on the other side was palpable. I could almost hear him gripping his desk, the veneer of confidence cracking. The subtle panic in his voice was intoxicating. We can negotiate, he said finally, almost pleading. Name your terms. We want to resolve this amicably. Amicably. I echoed, letting the word hang like a blade. After 12 years of making you rich, you call this amicable? No, I'm not interested in small talk or backdated agreements. You'll pay fair market value for what's mine? Everything else? Let the due diligence speak for itself. He stammered, trying to regain composure. Derek, think of the clients, the employees. You can't just, I already have, I interrupted. I've spent the last 12 years thinking about your deadlines, your crises. Today, I think about my own. And the first lesson you're learning is this: respect the people who build your foundation or risk losing everything. He went silent. I imagined him pacing his office, muttering to himself, wondering how he had miscalculated so badly. I could almost see the color draining from his face as he realized the precariousness of his empire. The arrogance that had fueled his success was now the first domino to fall. I continued calmly, letting my words sink in. You've been running on borrowed brilliance, Preston? Every client, every transaction, every single dollar your company earns, it's built on my patent, and legally it's mine. I didn't take it lightly. I didn't rush. I documented, I filed, I waited. Now it's my move. Derek, he finally pleaded, we can make this work. You don't get to decide what I do anymore. I cut him off. For 12 years, your whims decided my life. Today, I decide. You want your company to continue? You'll pay. You want to keep your merger? You'll negotiate. But know this, every misstep from here on is on you. The line went quiet again. The tension was so thick I could almost hear the sweat forming on his brow. I pictured his office, his expensive furniture, the framed certificates and glossy photos of awards he didn't earn. All of it fragile, now hanging by threads woven. With my code and my patent, I leaned back in my chair, feeling the weight of the moment. Preston Hargrove had just realized the world he controlled was an illusion. Every confident email, every dismissive meeting, every minor detail he ignored. They had all been built on me. Before I went to bed that night, I reviewed every possible move he could make. Corporate lawyers, board meetings, panic-driven decisions, even attempts to bypass my patent. I would be ready for all of it. And as I glanced at Tommy's baseball glove by the door and Katie's scattered homework, a strange clarity settled over me. For the first time, I wasn't just reacting. I was in control. The game had begun. And Preston would learn the hard way that you never underestimate the person who built your empire. Chapter 4. The dominoes start to fall Wednesday morning. Arrived with a sense of inevitability. I woke up to the usual city hum outside my window. But inside, my mind was anything but quiet. Preston's call from the previous day replayed in my head, word for word. Every sentence he had said, every pause, every attempt to regain control, I had cataloged it. I make coffee, brewed strong, black, no sugar, no distractions. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about precision, about strategy. I opened my laptop and began mapping every possible consequence of Preston's moves. Every legal loophole, every corporate protocol, every communication channel. I was preparing for war, but on my terms. By 10 a.m., emails started flooding in internal. Memos, alerts from former colleagues, whispers from industry contacts. Sterling Enterprises had entered a state of controlled chaos. Their top executives, the ones who had relied on my patent unknowingly for years, were suddenly scrambling to understand the ramifications of my ownership. I didn't respond. I watched. Patience. I reminded myself. Preston was already making mistakes, and I didn't need to intervene yet. Around noon, I received the first real sign that the ripple effects were beginning. A friend in legal compliance called, voice tight with excitement and a hint of fear. Derek, the board just convened an emergency meeting. They're discussing your patent, and Preston is panicked. He doesn't know what to do. I smiled. My hand tightened around my coffee cup. Finally, the scales were tipping at home. Tommy asked if I could help him with his pitching form, and Katie wanted to review her algebra homework. I realized that for the first time in years, I could be present. I wasn't glued to emails, panic calls, or corporate crises. Preston's world was crumbling, and mine was finally mine to live. By 3 p.m., Preston made his first public misstep. He called a meeting with the senior management team to assess risk and plan contingency. I watched through industry news. Updates as their internal communications leaked, an unprecedented scramble to understand the patent's implications. Emails with subject lines like urgent IP audit findings and immediate action required circulated like wildfire. The funniest part? No one could truly fix it without my consent. Every proposal they made, every negotiation they attempted, hinged on me. I wasn't even present, yet I controlled the narrative entirely. I took a break, walked into the backyard, and breathed in the crisp air. Tommy asked if I wanted to throw a few pitches with him. I agreed. Each throw felt symbolic, a small, controlled act, while chaos swirled miles away in Preston's office. Each strike and curveball mirrored my strategy. Precision, patience, power. That evening, another call came. Preston himself. This time, desperation laced his voice. Derek, I don't understand. How is this even possible? You can't just watch me, I interrupted, calm as ever. You built your empire on my work, and now you're learning the hard way that ignoring the foundation has consequences. I let him stew. For 30 seconds, a full minute, maybe longer. Silence is a weapon in negotiation, more powerful than any threat. Finally, he spoke, voice almost pleading. What do you want? Name your terms, please. I leaned back in my chair, considering. I didn't want money. Not yet. I wanted respect. Acknowledgement, leverage, and the satisfaction of seeing his empire wobble under the weight of its own ignorance. Respect, I said finally. And a clear acknowledgement that your company would collapse without what I created. The rest, let's see how the dominoes fall. He was quiet. I could almost hear him calculating, realizing the precariousness of his position. Meanwhile, my world felt different. I could help my children, spend time with my wife, live without fear of Preston's whims controlling my life. As night fell, I checked the news feeds. Internal memos, industry rumors, analyst speculation. It was all building. Sterling Enterprises was on edge, and Preston's first mistakes were starting to cascade into chaos. The first dominoes had fallen, and the others were already wobbling. And through it all, I remained patient, calm, and uncheckable. For the first time in over a decade, I held the cards. And Preston, he was about to learn what happens when you underestimate the person you tried to discard. Chapter 5. The final moves Thursday arrived with a tension that seemed to hang in the air like a storm about to break. I woke to the hum of the city outside my window, but inside, everything was quiet, deliberately. The calm before the storm. My phone buzzed with notifications, but I ignored them, focusing instead on breakfast with Tommy and Katie. The irony wasn't lost on me. While Preston and his empire scrambled, I was finally free to live ordinary moments that had been stolen from me for years. By 9 a.m., the first wave hit. Legal teams, executives, and consultants from Sterling Enterprises were in full panic mode. Emails leaked to industry contacts. Rumors spread across LinkedIn and Twitter. Analysts speculated about patent infringements, potential lawsuits, and the stability of the company. Preston's voice messages began piling up, urgent, pleading. I didn't answer. Patience was part of the plan. Every day I delayed, Preston's desperation grew. Every internal memo I intercepted through contacts confirmed that his empire was unraveling and that he had no way to stop it. At noon, Sarah Torres called. Her voice was tense, but excited. Derek, they're panicking. Preston has convened multiple emergency meetings today. Every executive is aware of the patent now. The board is considering whether to pause operations until they understand the full risk. They don't know what to do, and every move they make is one step closer to disaster. I smiled. This was exactly what I wanted. Not just money or leverage, but the realization that Sterling Enterprises had depended on me all along and had dismissed me as unnecessary. Spent the afternoon documenting everything I had discovered. Revenue reports linked to my patent, internal. Emails confirming my contributions, and even public filings that showed the company's reliance on my work. I wasn't just planning my next step. I was creating a historical record of justice. Then came the call I had anticipated, but still felt Surreal. Preston. Derek, we need to talk. Please. This is out of control. I let him stew for a long moment. Silence can be more devastating than words, and I intended to let him feel the weight of his own mistakes. Finally, I answered calmly. Preston, I've seen your panic. I've seen your team scrambling. I hope you understand now the foundation you were standing on. His voice was tight. I do. But you have to understand, this affects thousands of people. Clients, employees, investors. We can fix this. Name your terms. What do you want? I thought about it. I could demand millions, but that wasn't my goal. I wanted recognition, leverage, and the satisfaction of watching him realize he couldn't win without me. Respect, I said. Acknowledgement that your empire would crumble without my work. And a clear licensing agreement that reflects the true value of my contributions. The rest, we'll see how the dominoes fall. By evening, the effects were undeniable. Stock. Prices had begun to wobble. Clients were questioning contracts. Analysts were calling Sterling's leadership into question. Every email, every memo, every leaked internal message amplified the chaos. And through it all, I remained composed, unshaken. That night, I sat in my backyard, watching Tommy throw baseballs with precision and care. Katie was practicing piano notes inside. For the first time in years, I was present. And the feeling was intoxicating. Preston, meanwhile, was trapped in his own empire, forced to confront the reality he had ignored for over a decade. By Friday morning, the world outside had caught wind. Headlines screamed across tech news outlets. Sterling Enterprises faces potential collapse amid patent dispute. The patent that could topple a tech giant, CEO in crisis. Sterling's valuation in question. Preston's empire was crumbling, and I hadn't moved a single piece. I had merely created conditions for justice to unfold. Late that afternoon, he showed up at my apartment complex. I watched him from the balcony. Disheveled, weary, and anxious, he looked smaller, somehow diminished. The confident executive who once dominated boardrooms was now just a man realizing the consequences of ignoring the people who built his empire. When he called out my name, I stepped onto the front porch. Derek, thank God. We need to resolve this. I nodded slowly. We do, but understand this. I didn't create this situation out of anger. I created it out of principle. You can fix it, but you must acknowledge what you've been ignoring for years, the value of the people who actually build your empire. He hesitated. What do you want? I looked him square in the eye. Acknowledgement, fair licensing, and the lesson that disrespecting talent has consequences. The realization hit him like a physical blow. Every decision he had made, every dismissal, every corporate maneuver, it all unraveled. Because he had ignored the person who actually held the keys to his empire. And for the first time in over a decade, I felt truly free. Chapter 6, The Reckoning, and beyond, the following week was electric. Sterling Enterprises was in complete disarray. Clients were pulling contracts, analysts were questioning leadership, and the media had a feeding frenzy over the patent dispute. But in the middle of it all, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Control. Not just over my work, but over my life. Thursday morning, the board finally called an emergency meeting. Preston was pale, nervous, fumbling through exclamations while the senior executives whispered in corners. I watched through my contacts, every move recorded, every panic-stricken glance a testament to the truth I had quietly unleashed. Then came the call I had been waiting for. Sarah Torres on the line, calm but triumphant. Derek, they want to negotiate. Preston's desperate. He knows the deal is in your hands now. I smiled, letting the silence stretch before answering. Timing, I reminded myself as everything got by. Noon, Preston was at my apartment. The man who once made me feel invisible, now reduced to pleading for terms. Derek, we need to resolve this. Please? I let him stew for a moment, watching him realize how powerless he had become. Preston, I said finally, you ignored the people who built your empire. You dismissed the work, the hours, the dedication. Today, You're learning the cost of that arrogance. Renegotiated. Not a cent more than fair value. Not a term. Less than recognition. I didn't want revenge. I wanted acknowledgement, justice, and closure. By Friday, the news broke. Headlines lit up the web. Sterling Enterprises forced to license core technology after patent revelation. CEO learns hard lesson. Employees build empires, not executives. Tech giant faces unprecedented turmoil patent held by former. Engineer. Preston disappeared from public view. His empire trembled, his reputation tarnished. Meanwhile, I returned home unshackled from stress, finally present for my children. Tommy threw a fastball that nearly knocked me off my feet. Katie played a perfect scale on the piano. For the first time in years, I felt the quiet joy of ordinary life, enriched by the knowledge that the extraordinary had been mine all along. But the story didn't end there. Weeks later, I received an encrypted message from a former Sterling. Engineer, Derek, I've discovered something big. You need to see this. My curiosity ignited. Another mystery, another secret buried within the walls of the tech world I thought I had left behind. I leaned back in my chair, a grin spreading across my face. My journey had taught me one thing. The world is full of stories waiting to be uncovered, secrets waiting to be revealed, and people who think they have the upper hand, only until someone like me decides otherwise. And as I opened the message, I realized this was just the beginning. The next chapter was already writing itself.